Welcome to another episode of Going Green. I'm your host, Kathleen Harvey. It's been a long, cold, dragging out winter, but it's finally spring. And with spring comes spring flowers. One of the first things to emerge are referred to as spring ephemerals. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Let's get started. Spring ephemerals are one of the very first types of plants to emerge from the ground as soon as the ground thaws. What they typically do is grow underneath of larger trees before they leaf out. So the larger deciduous trees common in our area, such as oaks and maple trees, haven't yet leafed out. So this is the perfect place to plant these tiny little petite spring flowers that will come bursting up through the ground, getting enough sun before the overhead trees leaf out. And then as the summer progresses and it gets really hot and the trees leaf out, they will no longer get enough sun, so they'll go back to sleep and they'll go dormant in the fall, ready to emerge again in the following spring. Spring ephemerals are fun to have because after such a long, horrible cold winter, they're a joy to see popping up through the garden. So let's go explore and see what we can find in bloom today. This is one of the woodland beds I have. I have some endangered native wildlife species that have been artificially propagated to help keep them going in our area. One of the fun things that you can find you can actually even find at your local nurseries are things like hellebores, or also lantern rose. They're late this year because our winter just wouldn't let go, but they're finally blooming. They come in different colors, and here we have a pink and white one, and next to it we have something called a mayapple, which gets a white flower underneath of its large umbrella-like leaves, and then when those leaves fade, they develop small little fruits around May, when they bloom normally. Again, everything is late this year, that are referred to as apples, hence the name mayapple. We also have some lamian, which is a ground cover. So if you have a spot that's really tough to cover, that just nothing is growing, you can get ground covers like lamian and lily of the valley. And there's also things like Solomon seal, which are really fun to have because of the shape of the leaves and the flowers. Another part of my shade garden includes things like Virginia bluebells, ostrich ferns, young hostas that are coming up, sweet william, and something rare and unusual, a jack-in-the-pulpit. They're really neat to see. As well as trilliums, which are difficult to find. You won't see them at your average nursery. They're also endangered native wildflowers, so please don't pick them or dig them if you find them out in the woods, but rather purchase from a reputable grower of woodland plants that will be artificially propagated, so that you're actually helping to preserve our existing population instead of taking things out of the wild. But these are some different types of things for you to see and enjoy that you can have in your garden in the spring if you have the right conditions. This plant is another type of lily of the valley. Remember the lily of the valley, the French pink that we reviewed just a couple minutes ago? This particular one has white flowers, but it has variegated foliage. So that makes this variety also a little bit unusual, but fun to grow. Tree peonies are one of my favorites. They can outlive you and be available for another generation to enjoy. This is an heirloom variety that was actually gifted to me by an older person who is no longer in the area. So I will continue to enjoy it and hopefully pass it along to a future generation. We talked about the tree peonies. I showed you a couple that are in bloom. Tree peonies have a woody stem. They're different and have slightly different cultural requirements and bloom earlier than the herbaceous peonies. I just want to show you an herbaceous peony so that you can better understand the difference. This one is an herbaceous peony. It's in bud because it blooms later than the tree peony. And if you look, all the way down the stem is green. So in the winter time, this one dies all the way back to the ground, as opposed to a tree peony, which has a woody stem which will defoliate like an oak tree does in the fall, but it keeps its structure. So this is the difference between this one's the herbaceous peony and the others are tree peonies. Both enjoyable, but both very different and with different cultural requirements. These require full sun. The tree peonies want part shade. Here we have an heirloom French lilac. Wonderful fragrance. When people see these, they often go back to childhood memories of Grandma's garden. These were very popular 100 years ago, and this is actually a cutting of a 100-year-old plant that was imported from France. There are more modern hybrids that are readily available at your local nursery, but this particular one is an heirloom. It gets tall and it has retained its wonderful fragrance. It's one of my favorites to enjoy every spring. So I hope you've enjoyed our episode today on Spring Ephemerals. Thank you for watching. I'm Kathleen Harvey. This is Going Green. Hope you join us next time.